At least one person has been confirmed dead after Lee brought strong winds, heavy rain and dangerous storms surged to parts of New England and southeastern Canada this weekend when it made landfall as a post-tropical cyclone. Lee made landfall on Saturday in the Canadian province of Nova Scotia with powerful winds approaching hurricane strength, according to the Miami-based National Hurricane Center. The storm arrived on shore with maximum sustained wind speeds of 70 miles per hour, meteorologists said at the time. That was just a few miles short of the threshold necessary for a tropical storm to be considered a Category 1 hurricane, which is assigned when maximum sustained winds reach 75 miles per hour. A 51-year-old man died Saturday in Searsport, Maine, a coastal town and seaport about 50 miles from Bar Harbor, after a large tree limb fell on his vehicle and brought down power lines with it, the local media reported. According Wabi, the incident happened while the man was driving along Route 1, near Prospect Street at around 9 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday morning, which coincided with strong winds that ripped through the area with Lee's arrival. The emergency personnel who responded to the scene had to wait for crews from Central Maine Power to cut electricity to the downed lines before they could remove the man from his car. The authorities have not publicly identified the man, who died after being transported to a local hospital. Maine State Police urged people to stay vigilant while driving on Saturday, warning about the possibility of falling trees and debris caused by Lee's winds in a Facebook post. The post included an image of a shattered van windshield that part of a tree had crashed through, which belonged to a man from Ohio who was driving south on Route 11 in Morrow Plantation when he observed a large tree that was falling into the roadway, the state police force said. The top of the tree went through the windshield, with the impact causing a section of it to break off inside the van. The driver sustained minor cuts in the incident, and 5 other passengers inside the van were not injured. Lee intensified quickly as it tracked northward through the Atlantic Ocean last week, growing into a Category 5 hurricane before its wind speeds gradually declined over the course of the week. Although the storm did not make landfall until Saturday, it caused life-threatening surf and rip current conditions for days along a wide section of the U.S. East Coast. Various storm watches and warnings were in effect for coastal parts of Maine, New Hampshire, and the Canadian maritime provinces of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, as the storm moved in on Nova Scotia. A tropical storm warning for Maine was cancelled by Saturday night. The storm's maximum sustained winds had decreased further by Sunday morning to 44 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center. In a bulletin issued at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, meteorologists said that Lee was expected to pick up speed as it tracked northeast over the next several days, reaching Newfoundland by Sunday afternoon and Atlantic waters by Monday morning. The Nova Scotia Power said 277,000 were affected by power outages throughout the storm, which began blowing through the region Friday evening. The number of customers still in the dark had dropped to 52,000 by 2:30 p.m. Sunday. Halifax, Truro, New Glasgow, and the western part of the province, which includes the South Shore, the Annapolis Valley, and Digby, Yarmouth and Shelburne County, were hardest hit by the storm, the utility said in a release. Matt Drover, Nova Scotia Power Storm lead, said early Sunday that 170,000 customers had already had their power restored. As winds began to die down in many areas of the province, Drover said crews were out on the roads removing trees, getting up in buckets and restoring power, where possible. Drones were being used in the Halifax region to get a look at damage, while in western parts of the province, helicopters were being used to survey the situation on the ground. "We will get a significant number of people back on today," said Drover. Despite not reaching the intensity of Fiona, a powerful hurricane that arrived in Nova Scotia last year as a post-tropical storm, Drover said high winds still made things difficult for power crews Saturday. In Halifax, for instance, winds were higher than anticipated, he said. Drover expected most people to have their power restored by the end of day Monday, but those living in some of the areas hardest hit may have to wait longer. "As soon as we have an understanding of where those pockets of damage are, we'll update our outage map and update those restoration times," he said. Erica Fleck, Director of Emergency Management for the Halifax Regional Municipality, said storm surges, downed trees, and power outages were the biggest impacts of the storm in the city on Saturday. With around 130 downed trees and numerous washouts across the municipality, Fleck said the focus Sunday would be on restoring roadways, many of which were already damaged by July's historic floods. "We like to remind people that the crews are out there trying to get things fixed as quick as possible," said Fleck. "It would be very helpful if citizens could avoid travel if they don't need to." The city said most Halifax transit routes were up and running and continuing as scheduled, and that ferry service had been restored between Halifax and Dartmouth. According to Jason Mew, a director with Nova Scotia's Emergency Management Office, most people across the province took the storm seriously. "Nova Scotians are certainly getting used to more than their fair share of weather events," he said. "I believe they take it a lot more seriously now and they're better prepared overall, so they're not caught off guard trying to do last-minute shopping during a storm." Ferry service between Wood Islands, PEI, and Caribou, NS, was scheduled to resume Sunday at 5 p.m. with a departure from PEI. In New Brunswick, more than 11,000 were still without power Sunday morning, and more than 300 with PEI's Maritime Electric were waiting for their power to be restored. Top wind gusts of 117 km per hour were recorded at the Halifax Stanfield International Airport, while southwestern Nova Scotia saw gusts of between 90 and 110 km per hour and between 30 to 60 millimeters of rainfall in that same area. CBC meteorologist Ryan Snodden said the heaviest rain fell to the northwest of Lee's Track, where amounts of 50 to 100 millimeters or more were recorded. Many homeless people living in encampments throughout the Halifax area were moved to shelters established at St. Matthew's Church, Captain William Spry Community Center and Beacon House in Lower Sackville, Savage said during a news conference on Saturday afternoon. Bell, a major cellular service provider, confirmed in an email there were some wireless congestion on Saturday in areas where there are widespread power outages. Eastlink, Rogers and TELUS reported similar issues. All Halifax Public Library branches remain closed Sunday, along with Point Pleasant Park, the Halifax Public Gardens, and Camp Hill Cemetery. Lee made its closest pass by Massachusetts Saturday morning, bringing bands of heavy rain, strong wind gusts and dangerous surf to Cape Cod. The Outer Cape and Nantucket felt the strongest impact of the storm, which had once been a Category 5 hurricane as it moved north toward. The storm was the latest in a long stretch of foul weather that has left parts of sodden and worse. Police in Provincetown, Massachusetts, were able to help a lost seal that had become stranded in a marshy area when the tide went out on Saturday night. In a Facebook post, police said they received reports of the lost gray seal that had wandered into the middle of a roadway near the AWOL Hotel around 9 p.m. Officers said they worked to clear a path for the seal so it could make its way back to the beach and the ocean. The seal eventually made it back and police said it wasn't injured when it returned to its natural habitat. Lee's journey to landfall started more than 11 days prior in the form of a tropical depression in the central Atlantic Ocean on Tuesday, September 5. 6 hours after being declared a depression, it was upgraded to be the 12th tropical storm of the season, and Lee was showing no signs of slowing down. In just 18 hours on September 7, Lee rapidly intensified from a Category 1 hurricane with maximum winds of 80 miles per hour to a powerhouse Category 5 hurricane with winds of 160 miles per hour, the first Category 5 storm of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. At peak strength, Lee packed winds of 165 miles per hour, making it the strongest hurricane in the Atlantic Basin since Dorian in 2019, which had catastrophic winds of 185 miles per hour. Previously, Franklin held the title of the Atlantic's strongest hurricane this year, which peaked at Category 4 strength with winds of 150 miles per hour. To be considered a Category 5, sustained winds must be at least 157 miles per hour. As Lee tracks northeastward over Canada and loses wind intensity, a new tropical threat is brewing in the Atlantic. Tropical storm Nigel, named late Saturday evening, is currently swirling over the central Atlantic and is forecast to strengthen into a hurricane in the coming days.
Human-induced climate change.
Earlier last week, AccuWeather meteorologists explained that Nigel could follow in the footsteps of Lee, tracking close to the U.S. coast and potentially swiping Bermuda and Atlantic Canada. However, the storm is now forecast to take a northward turn earlier than previously predicted, which should steer it away from North U.S.
This is fucking gnarly.
Should the storm track farther to the west, rain and gusty winds may also impact Bermuda, AccuWeather senior meteorologist Adam Doughty said. Aside from these potential impacts to Bermuda, no additional impacts to land are expected.
Việt Nam lừa đảo để đầu tư. Chưa có một nước nào mà lừa nhiều như ở Việt Nam, mà tất cả lừa này đều công khai chứ không có núp lùm, và tất cả đều có dấu răng bóng dáng của quan chức đứng đằng sau. Và ai sẽ đứng đằng sau Nguyễn Ngọc Thủy thì ở cái video sau Thái sẽ chia sẻ với quý vị các bạn. Đến bây giờ nó đã lòi ra cái bộ mặt những cái người đứng đằng sau rồi, nhưng Thủy cũng ôm được mớ tiền gửi đi nước ngoài rồi quý vị các bạn, chứ không phải là không đâu. Tất cả đều lừa đảo hết. Quý chị các bạn chúng ta ai mà có tiền ấy thì cứ đầu tư cho Thái thì khéo lại lẹ hơn. Thái không lừa đâu. Đấy, Thái chỉ không trả thôi. Quý chị các bạn bắn vào rồi thì Thái không có cơ hội để Thái trả. Thái nói luôn từ đầu như vậy cho nó dễ, chứ còn thì nó hứa trả lãi các bác hay là ví dụ hứa trả lại các bác thì không có đâu. Đó. Dạ không ạ, anh Nguyễn Chí Tuyến thì Thái vẫn đang hỏi thông tin. Mấy ngày nay Thái không biết anh Nguyễn Chí Tuyến tình hình như thế nào. Không có ai ở chung với Thái cả, Thái ở một mình. Và một anh bạn của Thái mới qua thì là người miền Nam chứ không phải là ở ngoài Bắc. Đấy thì cũng chia sẻ với quý vị các bạn như vậy để quý vị các bạn chúng ta nắm bắt được cái thông tin tình hình liên quan đến ông sát Thủy. Quý chị các bạn chúng ta hãy không ai lo cho mình bằng chính bản thân mình, tự lo cho mình quý chị các bạn, và đừng có nghe lời ông Nguyễn Ngọc Thủy nữa. Thái thấy sau một loạt bản tin Thái đưa tin liên quan đến ông Nguyễn Ngọc Thủy thì người dân rất nóng lòng lên án Nguyễn Ngọc Thủy. Thế nhưng sau khi mà thấy ông Thủy ông đi dàn xếp, ông đi hứa chỗ này hứa chỗ kia, rất nhiều nơi phụ huynh bùi tai hay là lại êm, ví dụ như ở Lào Cai chẳng hạn là Thái thấy êm. Đấy, im ru luôn, nghe ông ấy hứa. Thế đến bây giờ thì không thấy đâu cả. Thế cho nên là Thái cũng thôi mặc kệ. Thế nhưng mà cũng có rất nhiều người rất là hay gửi hồ sơ cho Thái mà không hiểu sao họ lại có rất nhiều tiền, chứng tỏ ông Vương Đình Huệ ông nói không sai, tiền trong dân còn nhiều lắm. Bởi vì là coi như ông Nguyễn Ngọc Thủy ông ấy có người gửi cho ông Thủy tới cả mấy chục tỷ, người ít nhất là 300-400 triệu. Thế mà người nhiều nhất lên tới 64 tỷ, 64,4 tỷ. Đó, 64 tỷ 400 triệu luôn quý chị các bạn. Nó nhiều khủng khiếp đến mức như vậy mà Thái đọc phát khốt luôn. Đó. Tất cả chúng ta đánh vào lòng tham hết. Đó. Mà cái chuyện lòng tham này thì Thái đã nói rất nhiều lần rồi, chia sẻ quý chị các bạn nhiều lần rồi. Đó. Nhưng mà có nhiều người cũng sau khi nghe cái thông tin thì cũng có cái bức xúc, có thế này thế khác. Thế rồi ông Thủy ông đi trấn an, thế và bùi tai nghe. Ông Thủy ông có nghe thì cái thằng phản động nó nói. Đấy. Đấy. Và hoàn toàn là tôi không có cái chuyện đi định cư thế này thế khác. Dần đây này, tôi vẫn đang ở đây, đang đi đối thoại với các bác này, làm gì tôi đi định cư ở đâu. Nhưng mà quý vị các bạn chúng ta cứ chờ đi, nếu chúng ta bùi tai một ngày đẹp trời, Thủy sẽ không còn ở Việt Nam nữa đâu. Đấy là chia sẻ với quý vị các bạn, cảnh báo quý vị các bạn như vậy. Cho nên là quý chị các bạn ai mà nghe thì nghe, không nghe thì thôi, đây là tùy của các bác thôi. Vâng, xin chào và hẹn gặp lại quý chị các bạn vào bản tin sau. Thái sẽ tiếp tục cập nhật cái thông tin trong ngày hôm nay. Và Thái sẽ có khả năng Thái sẽ cập nhật lại cái bản tin buổi trưa, bởi vì cái bản tin buổi trưa ấy là có người gọi điện thoại đến và sau đó thì bị mất tín hiệu, mất mấy phút, cho nên là Thái không thể nói được hết, và có khả năng Thái sẽ chia sẻ lại. Mà nếu cứ cái tình trạng này thì có nhiều khả năng lên kêu gọi cộng đồng giúp đỡ mua một cái điện thoại khác, chứ còn cứ để thế này có rất nhiều người vô duyên, họ đang cái lúc mà Thái livestream biết Thái là livestream, họ gọi điện vào, gọi tới tấp luôn, gọi bao giờ bây giờ nó gần dường như phải bắt máy mới thôi. Đấy, kiểu họ cố tình họ gọi hay sao đấy, cũng chia